Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. Now, friends, if you run your own business, then you've probably gone headfirst into social media marketing. You're putting yourself out there, you're talking to the world, you're trying to get people to understand you, know, like, trust, all the things, right, you've heard it. And no one is buying your stuff. What is with that? So let's back that up and let's unpack it a bit, because I'd like to talk about your brand story. And if you're saying, well, Mary, I don't even know what a brand story is, girl, I got you. We've got a really great expert to simplify it all down for you today. Her name is India Jackson, and she's the CEO of Flaunt, a visual marketing agency known for taking an unapologetically authentic strategy to branding and visibility that really gets her clients real ROI. From Christian Dior to coaches and their staff, over the last 11 years, her team have provided consulting, strategy, photography, training, and more for their clients. She is an expert at this stuff, not only behind the camera as a photographer, but also you should know more about her award-winning plant-based bodybuilding that she does that helps her brand story as well. She loves disrupting the way people view career labels, branding, visibility, and ultimately themselves. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, India Jackson. Hey, India.
Oh my gosh, thank you for the epic introduction.
I'm glad you're here. And, you know, it's so interesting when I think about marketing, branding, and sales for small businesses. Because you think, well, okay, I've got this magic thing that I do, my art, my expert status, my whatever, the thing I make, and I want to get it out there. I want people to buy it. They don't buy my stuff. What's the deal, India?
I think that many people can identify with that, and everyone has gone through a phase of that at some point.
Yeah. So when I talk about how to tell your brand story, let's first break that down and simplify it. What do you think a brand story is, and why is this so important?
Well, I think that first, in order to understand brand story, it's important to understand brand. And for all intents and purposes, for me and also for the business that I own, Flaunt Your Fire, brand means how people feel when they're done interacting with you. But it's also, if I had to introduce you, Mary, to someone and say something about you to get them to book a call with you, what would I say? And in that case, I would look at branding as really your reputation. So then when you start to think about brand story from this place of reputation and less about like your logo, your graphics, or the things that get you the reputation, which sometimes is your imagery as well. I really then start to kind of backstory that on how can you use your story to get the reputation that is accurate and aligned with you. So a part of that for me is really just taking a good look at who you are. And really sometimes it's meditating, sometimes it's journaling, but unpacking that, where who you are and who your brand is overlap, because that may be different in some areas and it may be similar in others. And then also, where do you want to go? Who do you want to talk to? And what impact do you make when you speak to them, or when you provide that service to them? So I like to look at those things and then also audit kind of how your reputation currently is. What do people currently say or think? Because it may not be aligned with those things. And then looking at the disconnect to see where do you fill in.
Right. So, okay, if you are running a small business and maybe you are also just part of a small team, right? Let's say small means, 1 to 5 people on your team. You're the face of the brand, right? Like they come to you, they know that you're the expert that is leading the ship, right? But here's the thing that I hear a lot of times, and I'll be frank, I was like this for a great number of years as well. It's like, I don't want to put myself out there. Like, I just kind of want people to buy the thing and I can go do the thing over here and not really be in the limelight or in the spotlight of my brand. Why do you think we have a fear of that?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think visibility comes up, and I usually believe that it can be linked to mindset. So without going too far in the other direction of conversation, but I think it's important to note is that sometimes there's this I'm not that interesting or not enoughness that can be underlying with that, or just kind of not wanting to put yourself out there that can be linked to these other things of comparison to the other brand that might be doing something similar to you. So I always think it's good to kind of investigate that and see, why is that there?
Yeah.
We're always more interesting than we think we are.
Well, and that, I think, also part of it is if you've come off of the corporate 9 to 5 train, right? You've worked for a bigger company and, you're used to hiding behind a bigger name and a bigger brand and you're just one of the numbers. Like, it is a big shift in your mindset and in everything to be like, oh no, hang on. I am the face of the Simplifiers, as a whole. So, yeah, I think it requires you to shift a mindset, but then also have a bit of courage to put yourself out there. I remember in previous conversations with you, India, you had said that, business owners really have to embrace the fact that they are a leader, an influencer, and an ambassador. Tell us more what you mean there.
So for me, being an influencer, it's such an overused term that sometimes gets like, ew, influencers, because we're so used to seeing it be like, buy this thing through this link that I've never used.
Right. And make 7 figures in 2 hours or less a week, right?
Yes. But I think of influencers, someone with influence. You have an impact on others.
Yeah.
You can influence their buying decisions. You can influence how they see the world and also how they show up. And because of that, for me, being an influencer is also being a leader. Because these influencers that you see on social media, not to throw shade on them or anything, but that are constantly putting out this link of buy this thing or make 6 figures, to me, that's not influence, because you're not seeing on the back end of how that makes people feel when they read that messaging, and whether or not they're actually like pulling the trigger and buying the thing. So I find the people with the most impact and influence on decisions that others are making, they're more of leaders. And the challenge in this whole branding thing is that kind of I'm not that interesting. They don't always see themselves as a leader.
Yeah. Well, let's unpack that, because I think this really is fascinating. It doesn't take more than 2.5 seconds before you open your Facebook feed and you've already get bombarded with a promoted ad that says you need this thing because you are not enough. Like, that really is, or maybe my Facebook algorithms show me that in the ads that I see. And so I think that as a small business owner, sometimes we get really sensitive that we don't want to come off like that to other people. But the rub is if we're a for-profit company, we got to sell our products and services, right? So how do we find that balance between, hey, I need to put myself out there and sell stuff, and people need to buy stuff for this to be a business and not a hobby, but not do it in an icky way like that?
What comes to mind for me is a mentor of mine, Tara Newman, and she said that all you really need to make money and run a business initially, like the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of it, even though I don't eat meat, is you have to have a relationship and you have to have a way to serve.
Yeah.
And so when I think about putting yourself out there without feeling like you're just buy my thing, part of it is you can do it from the standpoint of building relationships. And it's really, people buy from other people. So while your logo and these things come into play, and they're important because they attract the right people to you that will resonate with your message, the whole point of those things is to be able to build a relationship. And part of relationship building is I want to feel like I know you, I like you, and I trust you. And I can't do that if you're not putting yourself out there.
That's true. It's true. And it's hard to hide behind a facade, without actually putting yourself out there and telling behind the scenes stories. Like, how do you create your art? Let's say you're a wedding planner. Like, let's see how you set up the hotel ballroom for a client's wedding, what your process and methodologies are, what's really hard in your job, and showing the value of the work that you do. And you go, oh my God, I had no idea she and her team did this, and this. Oh, now I get why her services cost this, It really requires a bit of courage there. So going back to what you were saying earlier then, how can we be ambassadors then?
So, what I think of an ambassador is being a representation of. And so, as you're going into business, and say, for example, you work one on one with clients, I do feel like to a degree, every time you step out there and put yourself out there, you're also representing that client to a degree. And there should be a healthy amount of separation between that so that you're not taking on the personal identity of your business for yourself. However, once you start to get sponsors, you are representing that sponsor as well. So some of the things that you say on your podcast, for example, could affect how that brand that sponsored you is seen. And as we start to get into those things, I always say it's a representation of, because I have to remember, for example, I'm sponsored by a clothing company called One Clothing, that when I wear their fitness apparel to a bodybuilding show, that the things that I say or do could then affect subconsciously how someone sees what type of person wears this clothing and whether or not that's for them.
Right. Okay. So I think that's really interesting to think about those three different factors of who you are as a business leader, a business owner, as a leader, an influencer, and an ambassador. So if you're listening to this episode right now, think about the ways that you also fit into those three roles in your own business and your own brand. Okay, so we're ready to break this down and start to cultivate our brand story. Where do we begin, in your opinion?
I think a great place to begin is to audit what other people think that your story is. And a great way to do that is if you're on Instagram, they now have like the story sticker.
Yeah.
So you can put the question sticker there and just start asking some questions of your audience, or even the poll of like, do you think that we're coffee drinkers or tea drinkers? It's like a simple question.
Yeah.
But to see how much do people really feel that they know about the story behind your brand. Do we like pink or do we like red? And this will give you an idea of how accurate that is and how you may need to start showing more of what the brand is, what it represents, and the story behind it. And I think just kind of reconciling some things too with maybe a business coach, or even for some people, working with a social media marketing specialist or visual specialist to see how can we better tell the story. One of my favorite things to see is something you said, which is behind the scene photos. Because I want to know who your people are. And I think every business has people, even if it's just a virtual assistant, but just kind of getting a feel for what it feels like to work with you and what a day in that business looks like.
So maybe and maybe it's also, like you say, going out onto your Insta stories, polling your existing audience and asking them to, if they had to describe your company in 3 words, what would those words be? And you might be actually quite surprised at what they say. You think that you're doing something that's soft and romantic and calm, and other people are interpreting that as risk-taking and daring and innovative. So there might be different words in your mind versus what reality is of what people interpret. And so, yeah, I think that's really interesting to me to kind of ask the audience. And let me just back up. If you don't have a massive Instagram following or you're just starting off, you can ask your friends too, right?
Yes, you can ask friends, family, business friends, you name it. It doesn't have to be social media.
Yeah, vendors, colleagues, even if you have friendly relationships with your competitors, ask them. And also, feel free to replay the favor back to them as well. So, okay, so a brand story, let me make sure I've got this right. It includes your photos, your logo, your copy on your website, your fonts. What else?
It also includes what colors you choose. There's a whole psychology behind color, which can be a whole podcast in itself, but it's the colors. I also think it's showing your people, and it's also storytelling. So you can't skip the story. You can't hide behind your marketing.
Yeah.
I've seen people do that. You do want to dive back into a little bit of like, why did you start doing what you do? Why is that important to you? And what impact you wanted it to have on people? And I think that those are some of the things that we can convince ourselves as business owners that are not important, but they actually resonate the most with your audience.
And so that's really cultivating your brand voice, right? So in the copy, in your marketing materials that I think that people who follow the Simplifiers start to pick up the Maryisms, in our website and in all of our things that we do. It takes time, but I think it also takes a bit of courage to just be like, okay, we're not going to vanilla and tone this down. This is truly the quirky, fun, down to earth side of the brand and of the Simplifiers.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the audit can really come into play there too, because it's very easy to think that we've told a story or everybody knows that our business did this or we started because of that. And then you find out like no one knows because you didn't tell them.
Right. Yeah. And I also imagine that people jump in and jump off of your social media feeds or, the customer buying journey at different places. So even if 2 years ago you felt like you did this whole thing on social media where you talked about the origin story and where it all began, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to talk about it again now. It may be that the people that are actually following you right now and consuming whatever you're putting out there, the content, or even your existing prospects that are in the pipeline may have no clue. They may have not jumped on 2 years ago, right?
Exactly. I'm a huge fan of what we call transform and repeat. I believe that a business is always evolving and transforming. And with that, you're attracting new people, but your story changes a little bit. You see it from a slightly different perspective. So it's important to repeat telling it. You could do a post today and someone sees it today and forgets about it tomorrow. But with the algorithm changes on Instagram alone, half of your audience doesn't see today's story.
Right.
Put that back out there a few weeks from now and repurpose it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So how do we make sure that our brand story is truly feel aligned to like our real authentic self? Because India, sometimes for me, especially if I'm like dealing with like a big change or lots of stress in my personal life, the last thing I want to do is get up on social media or get in front of a camera and talk to people. So how do I delicately balance that need to be authentic? Yes, be the real me, but then also sometimes just not wanting to be on camera and do it.
Yeah, actually, honestly, for me, it's about giving yourself permission to not. And part of the way that you're able to do that, or at least I've found works for me and my team, is when I don't feel like getting on camera or we don't have much to share at the time because maybe we're rebranding like we currently are and there's a lot going on behind the scenes. We love batching. So that way, like even with Instagram stories, you can batch that. You can batch some videos and you have a bank of content to work with on the days that are just like crazy and you have tons of clients and no time, or where maybe you're going through something and you just don't feel like being on camera because you know that it's not coming from the energy that you'd want. But what I've found over the years is it's a two-part thing. So it's okay to batch and to put that out there that day. But I also highly recommend like journaling about or writing some captions from the place that you are in that moment and then sitting on it. Because I think it's important to give yourself some time to pause to where you're no longer in that emotional place or you're no longer burnt out or whatever it may be, to decide, is this something that I still want to share, number one? And if so, why? Can it help someone? Can it make them feel like they're not alone with what they're going through? But you're doing that from a place of clarity instead of being in the messy middle of it.
Yeah. And, I also imagine, for me, I always ask the question that, does this bring value to our audience? Like, will they learn something from this? Will this spark a new idea? Will this give them something that enriches their life? Even if it's literally a smile or just a laugh at one point, right? And if it isn't, then that's my filter. So I'm like, well, I don't really need to show you what I ate for breakfast because what does that matter, right? Unless I was like a nutritionist and, I make meal plans, of course, like I'd want to show you my breakfast and hopefully that inspires you. But is that a good rule of thumb in your mind?
I think it is. I also think it's important to show that, to bust holes in the idea of perfectionism as well. And so that's the area where I say that if you're going to go into showing some of these things to show the more human side of yourself, what it looks like to run a business, or even the people that work within your business, if they're comfortable with sharing some of their stories, it's allowing that to be written while it's happening so you don't forget it once everything's great again.
Yeah.
But then pausing and then reframing it a little bit so that it can shed some light on some things and empower people. One of the things that comes up for me is I have stage fright, which no one would believe because I compete in a bikini on a stage as a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
But I share those stories about the stage fright after I've competed, not while I'm in the middle of competing for a contest. Because it allows me to like write down how these feelings are coming about, how pushing through it anyway, help me get over that fear to a degree. But I'm able to take 2 steps back and say, how can I frame this in a way where it supports someone else sharing their story or knowing that it's only normal to have stage fright or to have imposter syndrome, which is something that comes up a lot in the online space.
Well, and see, this is what I think is so interesting is, okay, you run a visual marketing agency, so you help other companies, with creating branded headshots and, really thinking about their branding strategy and all that good stuff. But you as an individual, you do bodybuilding and you are vegan, right? You're plant-based diet or vegetarian?
Yes, I'm plant-based.
Okay, so this is a fascinating detail about you that sets you apart from other, visual marketing agencies and photographers that are out there. So for me as a consumer, I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Tell me more about that. Like, I'm curious about what you do when you're not at work from doing the 9 to 5 as well, right? That's part of your brand story, right?
It's what humanizes me and the brand and
Yeah.
why we want people to flaunt their fire.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then do you work also with a lot of fitness companies as well? And so they might also be attracted to like learn more about you and feel connected with you because you've got this fitness element to yourself and to your business?
Yeah, so one of our clients actually is the Organization of Competition Bodies, and they're the largest drug-tested bodybuilding league in the world. And
Wow.
they're one of the only ones that polygraphs as well, because of course you have steroids and different things and diuretics people can use to get a result. And they're completely anti that. But being able to show like my journey as an athlete and how I'm one of them, and to empathize with, I understand what an athlete goes through from beginning like a weight loss journey to all the way and being ready to be an athlete and get on the stage for the first time, makes people feel more comfortable with me. And so I find that there's something like that for almost every business owner where you can truly relate to your clients and you've experienced some of the things that they're going through. So it's important to share that because that builds a trust. But it also shows your why. I think your why is so important and people can kind of forget that in their day-to-day marketing.
So tell us more about Flaunt Your Fire. Like how do we do that? How do we prepare ourselves to flaunt our fire and in our personal brand?
Oh gosh, that's a wonderful question. I think it really is different for everyone, but I think that when you take the time to audit and clarify, you'll be able to see where maybe you weren't showing up as much as you thought you were. And I love just working with someone who can have an outsider's perspective and help you build the strategy of what that looks like. So for some people, it's that they love makeup. And while their brand may have nothing to do with makeup, being able to show like how that helps them have confidence and show up in this new way is a story that maybe some of their followers and some of their clients would resonate with. So there's so many different ways to approach it, but I really think it's just being in a place of authenticity. And I also think just not allowing yourself to hide. It's so easy to hide behind great marketing, but then we're not showing up when it comes time to network. Or the flip side that I see is that we can show up when it's time to network, but feel like we have to be so perfect online that we don't want to show up in the online space. So I think part of flaunting your fire is looking at what makes you different and being excited about that and saying, this makes me me, and I'm going to lead with that first instead of feeling like I have to hide it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's tricky because of comparison to other people, feeling like, ooh, well, that person over there has got 5 years more experience than I do. So, ooh, okay, I'm just over here doing my thing, trying to do the best I can. But then I also think that when it comes to social media in particular, everything seems so filtered and perfect. And, size 2 waist and all the things and no double chin at all. And like everything just seems like a false reality. And I think
Yes.
I'm curious, given that you are a photographer, like what your thoughts are on this, because I think there is a delicate balance of having really polished professional photos, in your marketing materials and on your website, but then also having the selfies and having the photos that are not necessarily filtered as well. How do we navigate that?
Yes, I definitely think that there's room for both. I am a firm believer in, so number one, you have polish from the standpoint of like how it's edited. And then you have polish from the standpoint of what happens before the image is taken. And I'm a firm believer in number one, addressing the polish from before it was taken to say, rather than you pose with a certain pose and you hold your head like this.
Yeah.
Like, no, with our clients, like we give them some pointers of what looks flattering based on their body type and their face shape. But from there, we're following you around for a day, documentary style. And I love that style of shoot. I think that's important for every brand. So we're getting to see what it really looks like and we're documenting it instead of creating something that you're not. One of my favorite things to talk about in that arena is if you don't wear makeup every day, don't have like a full face for your photo shoot. It's not required. You may want to do some foundation and concealer and some mascara, a little bit of color so that you have some type of polish that we don't feel like you need to like Photoshop out pores or blemishes. But to have like a full, that's a celebrity drop, but like a Kim Kardashian, like just doesn't make sense if that's not everyday you. Well, you shouldn't make yourself into something you're not. And I think on the other side of that is, as far as the editing, really taking the time to find that healthy middle between I'm going to brighten up these images so that they have more contrast or more color, but I'm not going to completely make like plastic skin. That's not relatable.
Right. And I think that people see right through it. I think that's where the little red alert in their head goes, is this real? Is this truly authentic? I mean, everything seems too picture perfect all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a delicate balance because on the one hand, you hear advice on Instagram, well, make your grid, your 9 photos look beautiful and they're all part of the same family and it's all perfect. But the reality is sometimes I think I personally as a consumer kind of just get a little turned off by it. I'm just like, ugh, is it really perfect? Are you really showing me the true you in all this? And then I just question the business and I question my trust in, are they showing me the real thing? So what about when you don't want to be seen? You had said to me, people can't see you if you're not ready to be seen. Why do you believe that?
Ooh. So this is a subject that I love to discuss, and I think it's rooted in mindset. Visibility and mindset are completely intertwined, and it's something that I think many people have not made the connection between. But I, as a service provider, can help someone get insane visibility all day long. We can create the most wonderful, authentic images for themselves. And if they're still not in a place where they have emotionally caught up to this is me, I'm this amazing person that people want to know and love, and my community is so interested in me, then there's something that can happen where there's something in them that still is not quite ready. Because they don't necessarily have drawn the connection that where I was possibly in the past is not where I am now. And I've actually stepped into it. Whatever it was that I wanted being here, I am the person I wanted to be. I find that happen more than I'm not there yet. And it's funny because imposter syndrome is such a buzz topic right now. But I see that so differently. And so does my partner, Erica Corday. She sees that differently as well as far as business, to where she does coaching and she's coaching people on their mindset. And a lot of these women who feel like they're an imposter or they're not quite there yet or they're not enough, what's really underlying underneath that is I've always been enough. The person I'm being right now is actually like who I am. the imposters who I was being before, because it was thought of what I needed to be in order to get by, or what I needed to be in order to have this business or to get this client. And now that I'm moving away from that and stepping into more of who I am, this feels uncomfortable because it's the first time you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also if you have got a personal branding photo shoot coming up, so you've made the leap and you said, right, okay, I'm going to go get some professional photos done, and we're not talking like Olin Mills, like glamour shots, a la
None of that.
early '90s kind of, with the star fade and all that. I'm talking like actual photos by a professional branding photographer, what have you. What would you give as your best advice for those people that are to make the most of their shoot?
Number one is to get crystal clear on your why, who you are, and what you want to attract. Because a great example is my wardrobe is all black. I love it because I can just go in my closet and pick anything and it all matches. I have a couple other colored pieces, but they're pretty much all red. But I have to be very mindful that when I show up for branding shoots to add pops of color, because my woman that I want to attract wants to live her life out loud. She's finding that place where she's accepting who she is. And it's like when everyone else is going left, I want to go right and not do the soft pastels, not do the pinks. So I incorporate orange and red when we do branding shoots. So it's that clarity will kind of give you a better idea of how to adjust the clothing a little bit to where it still feels like me, it's still aligned, but it's going to attract the person that I think I can help the most. And then I think the other side of that is really taking time to have a strategy, really auditing what you currently have on your website, your print marketing, your business cards, because it's so much more than social media and people think of that first, but also what images are going out in your email list. And then you'll be able to see where your holes are. So I find the biggest hole that people tend to have is behind the scenes of what a day in your business looks like. So if that's the thing, then list out everything that you do in a day in your business. And that's your shot list for a behind the scenes shoot. So for some people, it's the lifestyle piece. I see people can go really far left where it's all lifestyle and then really far right where like it's no lifestyle.
Yeah.
But if your day-to-day lifestyle in your business is that you're eating your meals on a schedule, you meal prep, or you like working out, show some of that. Some of our business clients love CrossFit. And I'm like, I want to see more CrossFit in your Instagram. Well, that's not a part of your business. If you're a leadership coach, showing your CrossFit, actually one of our clients does this, shows how being a high performer in CrossFit can translate into being a high performer in the business place. And now it's something that's relatable on a human level and on a what you do level. So I think shot lists make all the difference.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as a tip, because then you can take a look at your existing website, or if you're going through a brand refresh right now, and go page by page and say, you know what, I really need a photo where it's a wide shot, maybe something colorful in the background, but a place I can put text up on the top of that photo, right? So I need something like this, and if you're working with a skilled, experienced branding photographer, they are going to be hand in hand with you, working through that list together and thinking through it. And I also really like this idea of being very, very clear of who your ultimate ideal client is, like the person that you hope to attract and you love to work with, that will also resonate with those photos as well. Again, I can see there's a delicate balance. Like I don't want to dress inauthentically, just simply to attract somebody that I want to work with. I want to be me. It still has to be me, right? But, really just being conscious and intentional with those images and where you're going to use them.
Exactly. So like even in the clothing example, my wardrobe is mostly all black, but for the branding shoot, I will wear the same style I normally would, but maybe I just have one pop of color, which still feels authentic because it's not completely an all colored outfit. But I find too that there's the other side of this, which is aesthetic. And aesthetic is a tricky one with photographers because some photographers come from the school of thought of an artist. And I have an art and design degree, so I understand that school of thought is this is my style. I shoot this style. And it's whether or not, your brand fits within that style. And then there's also the school of thought of, I don't have a style, I'm a service provider. And so I match my style to whatever it is, style that is going to support your brand. And I think that the beauty is being able to take control of your brand and say that when you are picking a photographer or wardrobe stylist, that you're interviewing them, you're hiring them for a position. And to get really clear on which type of person are they? Are they artsy and they have their style and that's what they're amazing at, but they don't really go outside of that too much, or the other side will help you make that decision. But then it also gives you some clarity of what you're looking for aesthetically. If your brand is bright and colorful and it feels warm and inviting, you definitely wouldn't want to go with someone who's more minimalistic and is using mostly black and white and doesn't know how to shoot another way.
Yeah, well, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, when I have chosen photographers to work with in the past, I'm looking at their portfolio. And as long as I can see at least 4 or 5 images from other people that they've shot, and I go, wow, that's a beautiful photo, something like this, but stick me in there, then at least I know what their presets are on their photography. So are they shooting in a muted palette, or are they shooting with bold, vibrant colors? And how does that, again, interject and mesh well with your brand story?
Yeah.
So what about hair and makeup and hydration and all of those things? You got any tips there?
Yes. Number one is what a lot of people don't know is one of my largest clients is LVMH Group, and I help them build out a lot of their marketing and imagery for Christian Dior. And of course, they have the beauty brand.
Yeah.
And so I learned with that and going through all of their courses and things like that in skincare, that the most important thing is hydration, hydration. If you know that you booked a shoot at least a month out, like as soon as you book it, start easing yourself into a gallon a day. Your skin is going to thank you for it later, but also your body will thank you for it. You'll have more energy too. I think that's really important. It's going to affect whether or not you feel like you need the makeup, or whether or not the makeup was a choice that you wanted to add on. And then I'm a big fan of having foundation and concealer and things to help you feel polished, but still not going out of your comfort zone when it comes to color. Like if you would never wear a smoky eye, don't do a smoky eye for your shoot.
Yeah.
You want people to be able to walk up to you or see you at the Starbucks line and still know that that's you.
And recognize you. Yeah.
Yes. You with no makeup should match the you on your marketing photos. Hair, I'm a big fan of finding a company that specializes in helping people with photo shoots, because I find that it can go one way or another. Your everyday hair that you get from the salon or DIY may not quite be as polished as you want to be for a shoot, because it needs to be able to last in whatever environment you're in. So one of the things that we forget to consider when it comes to makeup and hair is the humidity. If you're going to be outside, and maybe even going for a walk, if that's how part of your lifestyle, now your hair can fall from the humidity, or your makeup can start to melt from the heat.
Right.
So you do want a professional, but then also maybe building a Pinterest board of example styles that you feel like fit you, that you would still wear in your everyday life, so that they can find a way to just give it a little bit more staying power.
It's such a good advice. I have found a most amazing personal branding photographer here in the UK. Her name is Karina Lyburn, and when we book her, she brings along the most amazing hair and makeup artists as well. And so, I think that it makes the shoot itself very special and different. But then also, you're keeping your focus with the photographer, and you're not worrying about, do I look all right? Is my hair okay?
Exactly.
There's another person part of this conversation and there on the shoot that is solely focused on making sure that you look your best. So I think that for me, I've done enough shoots that I'm confident enough in front of the camera, but I can tell you the very first one I did, 10 years ago, it was scary the first time, because you're like, oh God, this is me. Okay. Here we go. But I think with anything, it's repetition, right? I mean, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get being in front of the camera.
I agree 100%. I feel like it's only normal to be nervous the first time.
Mm-hmm. Right. So if you guys want to learn more about India and her visual marketing agency, or, you're based in the States and you want more photos done for yourself as well, I highly recommend checking her out. Her website is flauntyourfire.com. And where do you like to hang out on social media?
Ooh, I love Instagram. I'm on Instagram a lot, so you're more than welcome to DM me. That's definitely my number one platform. And I also have a podcast, Pause on the Play, that I'm the co-host of. And
Perfect.
that's a great way to get some more tips.
That's great. So we'll put those links in the show notes for you guys if you want to check it out. Just go to the simplifierspodcast.com. Now, you and Erica are launching an online workshop, right? On Thursday, January 16th, 2020. Tell us more about that.
Oh, I am so excited about it. It's definitely going to be merging the mindset behind visibility so that you're ready to be seen. You've owned who you are. There's no imposter syndrome when you're done, and you fully stepped in the light of who you are. Erica's handling the mindset side. And then I come in and help you figure out, now that you've had these breakthroughs, how do you step into being seen in a way that feels authentic to you? And we roll out a strategy that you can then take to any photographer you want to work with. And you have clear terms on your side of that, but also photography terms of like contrast and lighting and ISOs that they'll know how to execute on to make sure that the images that you get are on brand.
Brilliant. So we'll put a link in the show notes for you guys if you want to check out that workshop. Again, it's happening in mid-January. And if this is something that is of interest to you, I highly recommend wherever you are in the world listening to this now to give it a go. So I have a couple of questions for you, India, that I like to ask everyone that comes on the podcast. First and foremost, what is one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Ooh, so disclaimer is I actually take in a lot of content from podcasts, especially yours, Mary.
Oh, thanks.
I've gotten so much from that. So I'm more of a podcast person than a book. But the last book that I read that I loved was The Alchemist. It completely changed the way I saw following your destiny and staying true to yourself.
It is such a good book. I highly recommend if you have not read it. It's an easy read, very quick, but it's also very powerful. It can really give you some great insight. We'll put the link in the show notes for people on that one. So tell us, who's one person in your network, somebody that you know particularly, that you just feel is up to brilliant things in their world, and we can shine the spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe even one day have them on the podcast.
Oh my gosh. I am in love with Lee McDonough. She actually transitioned from being a therapist to being a coach because she wanted to be able to help more people. And I think you would find her incredibly interesting, but she takes super complicated topics and things such as creating diversity in like programs.
Yeah.
And she's a white female, but I've seen her really be able to just create so much diversity in a way that looked easy. And she's also applying this into like her brick and mortar life of like where she lives in her local community, and really just being an ally to marginalized groups.
That's great. We will put a link in the show notes for her so you guys can check her out as well. So again, reminder, you can connect with India on Instagram or her website, flauntyourfire.com, to find out more information and get connected with them to see how they can help you with your personal brand story. One final question for you today is this. India, somebody somewhere is listening to this episode and they're just starting to get themselves out there. They're just starting to take some photos and, pull back the curtain, show themselves a little bit more. But it's super scary for them. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Ooh, I love this question. I would tell her to give herself permission to show up imperfectly. And when she feels so inspired to do so, give herself permission to batch her content from that place. So that way, when she's not feeling 100% like she wants to put herself out there, she already has some content to work with.
And do it nonetheless.
Yes, start today.
Great. Thank you so much, India. I appreciate you.
Thank you.